Well, hello everybody. It's exciting to be in here for our live stream video today. Today we are kicking off a 3-day live stream series, so I am excited to pop in here and share this time and experience with all of you. So today I wanted to touch upon rescuing in relationships. So I'm going to be calling today's video "The Truth About Rescuers in Love, plus 4 questions to break the habit." And so if you have ever found yourself caught in a relationship dynamic where you are always playing the role of rescuer, pining for a partner, trying to save them, or you seem to attract and or be attracted to partners that want to save you, then this is really the segment that you want to watch, because I'm going to explain how both anxious and avoidantly attached individuals can end up playing the role of rescuer. And also we're going to ask 4 questions for you to help you break the habit. So if you don't know me, or this is your first time joining me on this channel, my name is Brianna McWilliam, and I'm an author, educator, and a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist, and I've been in the field for about 13 years now. And so I use psychospiritual approach to creative arts interventions to help individuals struggling with insecure attachment go from feeling confused and fearful in their relationships to achieving what I call self-sovereignty and calling in soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want, without having to talk in circles around their feelings for hours or even years on end with no tangible result. And I call my approach the MAC method, which stands for Mastery, Awareness, and Creativity. And it's comprised of basically 3 steps. And that is cognitive reframing, body activation, and arts-based experientials. So in this segment here today, the information I'm going to be providing is intended to spoil some misconceptions, as well as support some cognitive reframing. And specifically, playing the role of rescuer is not so much about attracting or being attracted to the wrong partners, so much as it is playing out your own internalized worthiness issues in your romantic relationships. So in other words, what attracts you to this role may be a reflection of the conflicts within you, and therein lies the deeper lessons and meaning that you can derive from the experience, and of course, a path by which you can regain your personal power. So this video was really inspired by a few questions that popped up inside my online community in Facebook. And in particular, this question stood out to me. Do you find people with avoidant attachment style or anxious attachment style are more or less likely to take on the role of rescuer? If so, why is that? It seems to me that this is a theme with all of the avoidant people I've come to know. So rescuers really try to accept the bad parts of themselves by projecting them into their partner and then loving their partner unconditionally, and usually at great cost to themselves. So rescuers can be the fiery, sort of untempered voice of the wounded inner child. Sometimes they can be social advocates and fierce defenders of the underdog. And so a rescuer frequently involves themselves in group activities or humanitarian causes, whether it's organizing a rally, joining the Peace Corps, or simply donating once a month to their favorite charity. Now, on some level, this provides a sense of belongingness for the rescuer, but it's also sometimes safety in numbers. So when you lead a group, you're not really of the group. When you bond to a cause, it's really easy to prioritize that above bonding to an intimate partner. So rescuers also tend to see the world in shades of black and white, right and wrong. And perhaps not so ironically, they tend to condemn those that they determine to be too prejudicial and condemning. And they don't see this as a contradiction that could impede their ultimate goal, which is usually the upholding of some kind of high moral standard. So they have a strong kind of unwavering faith that it is their judgment that produces powerful, positive change. And they don't see that as an internalized obstacle to making authentic contact with others. So they harbor a really deeply hidden internal critic, and it sometimes disguises itself as being very liberal and accepting. So for rescuers, the intimacy of romantic relationships tends to make them vulnerable to a condemnation that they experienced or witnessed as a child. So the inner critic becomes activated as a mechanism of protection against true emotional availability. And that would involve accepting the bad with the good. But by only connecting to partners that need rescuing, the rescuer kind of remains safely situated on the good side of that fence, and that is in the moral high ground. So eventually, the partner that needs rescuing will disappoint the rescuer and incur their judgment. And this activates in the relationship the split that the rescuer is always internally contending with. Am I good or am I bad? Am I worthy or truly deserving? I can't let my anger and my aggression out because I'll probably lose control and that will be harmful to others, and then everyone will disappear or hate me. And so ultimately, this relationship challenges the rescuer to lovingly accept the bad parts of themselves that they project into a partner. Now, frequently, people just assume that rescuers are anxious, open hearts or codependent because on the surface, they tend to exhibit a kind of compassion and a need to save their partners no matter how poorly they're being treated. However, if a failing partner begins to shape up or get with the program, suddenly the rescuer doesn't know what to do with themselves. And they may, in fact, lose their attraction. Either they don't feel needed anymore, and so the rescuer no longer understands what role they play in the relationship, or the emotional proximity between them has suddenly changed. And now there's the possibility of deepening intimacy because the distraction of the drama cycle requiring a rescuer role has relaxed. And so suddenly the rescuer may adopt a much more avoidant or rolling stone position and seem to kind of bow out of the relationship just when you would assume that they would be the most thrilled to be in it. So how might you break out of this type of relationship pattern? Well, in this video, I suggest that you really have to ask yourself 4 questions. And the first is, how has the rescuer role served you? The second is, how has it manifested itself in your relationship specifically? Meaning, how have you responded to the conflict in the dynamic? Thirdly, what allowances have you, if you are the rescuer, what allowances have you afforded your partner that you would never afford yourself? Meaning, have you found yourself forgiving certain behaviors on your partners that you would never allow yourself to do, right? And lastly, why and how now is this dynamic no longer serving you? So I want to dive a little bit more deeply into this. So when you experience conflict in a relationship and you often assume a rescuer position, consider, do you take it as an excuse to lash out and act the same way so that you can balance a scale that's kind of hanging like a cloud above you in the relationship? And by that, I mean, maybe you lash out at them, you yell at them, perhaps you hit below the belt and attack their character. Maybe you break things, you slash their tires, sleep with other people, throw all their clothes out the window just to prove a point. Or maybe you make a show of appearing unaffected so as not to give your partner the satisfaction, but then you try to hurt them just as much as they've hurt you in more passive-aggressive ways that are totally obscured to anybody but your partner, and they make you look like the one who's got it together while your partner remains a perpetual bad guy. Now, in either of these scenarios, love is very much about giving to get. There's a deep sense of scarcity around its availability, and so jealousy and envy are likely to be powerfully present, even if it's hidden just below the radar. And there may also be a level of emotional dysregulation around the feelings of anger, aggression, and sadness. Okay, so they're not easily expressed. And so when they are, they're either not well moderated, like in that first scenario where you're acting out without much forethought or mindfulness, or they're overly constrained, like in the second scenario where you're become super passively aggressive. Okay. Now, rescuers in this case remain in a relationship because the bad behavior of their partner creates the opportunity for them to behave badly too, in a manner that is justified in their minds. And so it's righteous and permissible. And so then they can rail against their lovers in the way that they were not allowed to rail against their parents. And so these kinds of relationships tend to be fraught with these sort of inescapable power dynamics, whether they are openly or passively expressed. Now, let's say that you swing in the complete opposite direction. When your partner comes to you on their hands and their knees, crying and begging for your forgiveness, so sorry about how they've messed up again, maybe you wind up sacrificing yourself for your partner's benefit, supporting them and acting unfailingly loving and compassionate, almost to the point of saintly, while repressing your feelings of anger, hurt, or resentment. Now, For the open heart or an anxious lover who does this, they often turn the anger in on themselves. And they decide that the behavior of their partner is more a reflection of their own value and how well or not well they are affecting the loving feelings of their partner. So if their lover messes up, it's because they weren't loving their partner well enough. And so it's not the partner's fault, it's their own. And this lends itself towards a habit of turning anger and aggression in on the self as a way to prevent it from leaking out and pushing the partner away, which threatens the attachment relationship. So here we get a lot of rescuers that end up feeling depressed, overly submissive, and feeling helpless and taken advantage of in their relationships. But they stay because the only way to prove yourself worthy is to make the partner behave in a worthy fashion. To accept anything else is to, in their subconscious minds, believe that they have no control. And if they don't have the power to influence their partner, then they have no value. And if they have no value, their worst fears are true. They're unlovable and nobody will need them. So inevitably, they will feel as if they're going to be rejected and abandoned. And that, of course, feels worse than anything. And it stimulates our survival instincts in our primitive brains. And remember, attachment is all about survival. Okay. So I want to just illustrate this a little bit. Another comment was offered in my online community that really speaks to this. So this is the comment. For the longest time, I used to take my partner's bad moods personally. I was quite anxious back then. I figured I must have said or done something to cause them to be grumpy, in spite of the fact that he'd even tell me it wasn't my fault. I felt sad that I couldn't cheer him up in the way that he could reassure me and improve my mood. My dad and my earlier partners didn't bring work issues home. They seemed capable of brightening up when they came in the door, which I imagine I happily took credit for. So is it normal for partners to be randomly grumpy at home and just say that it's not you, it's work? Now, it's as if what's being expressed here is, what is the extent of my power and influence over my partner? Because I keenly feel their power and influence over me. And I don't like being at the bottom of this power dynamic. And I wish that I could see more evidence of my power. I wish I had more control over them and the situation so that I could feel better about myself. Now, a desire to inspire warm feelings in a partner is not a bad thing, even if it's to make a partner feel good because you want to feel good about yourself. But if it leaves you questioning your relationship security and your sense of personal power, at the basis of this, there's a need of, and it makes you feel like you're sacrificing a sense of personal power, then at the basis of this is really a need to cultivate healthy boundaries so that you can express empathy as opposed to enmeshment. Okay, so that means allowing for a partner's bad days and good days without slipping into feeling more or less worthy or value or responsible for that, according to some circumstance, particularly one that is completely unrelated to you, is really important. Okay. So in other words, when your partner has a bad day and they get to tell you about it and they tell you that it's unrelated to you, when you allow it to be unrelated to you, you actually make it safer for your partner to open up to you about it, because then they're not afraid of becoming responsible for ruining your day too, because they know and trust that you don't take on more than is yours to possess. And so they can't hurt you or trigger you into questioning your self-worth by feeling what they feel. Okay. Now, for the avoidant rescuer who takes on this much responsibility, sacrificing themselves for their partner's benefit, supporting them and acting unfailingly loving and compassionate, almost to the point of saintly while repressing their feelings of anger, hurt, or resentment, it actually serves to keep those uncomfortable feelings at a distance. So the poorly behaved partner gets to embody all the feelings that they would rather not entertain because it is too threatening and vulnerable to feel that way themselves. So here you have what we might think of as a codependent avoidant type. So many labels in there that I despise, but I know it's a psychic construct that a lot of people understand. So this would be more like a codependent avoidant type. So someone who's likely to remain in a lifelong marriage to, let's say, a more anxious alcoholic type of person, for example. So they don't know how to be emotionally present in a healthy situation, but they have learned how to function well in a crisis situation. So they attach themselves to someone that is often in crisis. Okay. So that is how this plays out for both individuals that have anxious and avoidant attachment. And I hope that illuminates some of the truth about being a rescuer in love. And if you find yourself stuck in these dynamics, I want to review those 4 questions to help you break that habit again. So remember, the first question you want to ask yourself is, how has the rescuer role served you? The second question is, how has it manifested itself in your relationship more specifically? Meaning, how have you responded to conflict within this dynamic? Okay. What allowances have you afforded your partner that you would not afford yourself in a relationship? Meaning, you have found yourself forgiving certain behaviors of your partners, but you would just never allow yourself to act in that way. And lastly, why and how now is this dynamic no longer serving you? And so if you're interested in feedback, I would invite you to leave your comments and or answers to these questions in the thread below this video, and I could address them in a follow-up live stream event tomorrow. And if you're interested in learning more about attachment styles in general, you can check out my website, and there's also a link to an attachment styles quiz that I'm going to post in the caption of this video. So you want to remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you want more content like this. And I would see you in the next segment. Now, I want to just give a shout out to the people who are here on the call with me now. We have Amara Rubino, welcome. You did make a live stream. We have Shelby, welcome back, Shelby. You explain things in such a clear way. I love your videos in the group. Oh, Heidi. Oh, okay. Hi, Heidi. Now I know who you are. Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. We have Laura. Welcome. Cool. If you're watching and you want to type your name and where you're coming from in the chat box there, we can certainly dive into this. If you have any other questions, I've got another couple of minutes to hang out. We have Lovejoy, welcome from Ottawa. Nice. We have Margie. Margie says, your videos have helped me immensely. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Great. So I'm going to be coming back tomorrow to do another live stream at the exact same time. As you're watching this video, if more thoughts pop up, if you have any experience with playing the rescuer, or if you even have experience in the role of being rescued, I would love to see more about that in the feed here, and I can comment about that on our live stream tomorrow. We'll be doing another live stream on Wednesday as well. We have Susan Gale, welcome. Oh, good, I'm glad you're happy to have found the channel. And of course, we're gonna try to get an experiential exercise in here somewhere as we do our live streams, because of course, you know, it's not just about talking about the cognitive reframing, it's also about bringing it into the body and stimulating our creativity. Rebecca says, love your videos. Quick question. What's the rough time frame from realization of an insecure attachment to being healed? I know it's subjective, but would love a rough estimate. Okay. Well, so to address that, first, we kind of have to talk about this notion of being healed, right? Because you're kind of setting up this dynamic from, well, I'm not okay as I am, so I have to go from point A to point B before I can get all the things that I want, right? And so that mechanism in and of itself is actually the thing that is preventing you from being where you want to be right now. So we kind of have to let go of this notion of healed. And I use the term healed even in my own marketing copy because it's a term that a lot of us sort of understand in like a self-development context, but I would prefer to redefine it as a form of, rather than I need to get from point A to point B to heal what's wrong with me, I would rather think of it as like an unfoldment. So if you could imagine, I've used this metaphor before, but I think it's useful. If you could imagine like a light bulb, right? And someone splashes like paint on that light bulb. And so over time, the illumination of that bulb becomes more obscured. But if you can imagine, the bulb is not shining any less brightly beneath that. It's just obscured. So rather than think of healed would be like, well, it's a broken light bulb and I need to fix the light bulb, right? That's a very different sort of way of thinking about it as opposed to like an unfolding, or let's say a returning to yourself is perhaps a better way to think of it. But it's more about what are the thoughts, beliefs, fears, values, prioritizations that I am that I am entertaining right now that make me feel like the way I am right now is not good enough, or the way that I am right now is not healed enough. And the thing is that you can't really give a rough estimate, because some people will remain in that mindset their entire lives. And then other people will like have an epiphany and they change within 6 months. Other people will have, something will just click for them, and it's like they have a radical shift in their perspective. For me personally, when I started peeling back the layers of awareness, I think just only recently, probably within the past year, have I felt like the concepts that I've been espousing for years prior to that actually have sunk in to me on like a spirit level. Like I was telling my friend the other day, it was just a few days ago. I just laid in bed. I was trying to fall asleep. I'm hooked on this series on Netflix, The Outlander. And the end of the first season is pretty intense. There's a scene there with a sadist, and it brought up a lot of stuff for me from my last decade of my life. And a part of my journey with love and attachment and all of that was a path down into an underbelly of kink community and interacting with sadists and things like that. And that's how I learned a lot about the psychology of sadomasochism and how it plays into our attachment relationships and the power dynamics in relationships, and how all those things manifest in different facets of life. And I watched that season and it triggered all this stuff in me. And then I was laying in bed and I was thinking about it and I was integrating it and I was reflecting on my own experiences. And I just started bawling, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that I am like in this place where those feelings, those thoughts, and all of that stuff that I was just reminded of don't exist for me anymore. Like they don't, and they don't have the power and the influence that they used to have over me. And I'm so happy with myself. Like I'm so happy with where I am right now. And the things I thought I needed in order to be happy don't matter anymore. And it was just this wonderful experience of just being so just like, wow, I'm just right where I need to be right now. And I think that it takes everybody a different amount of time to get there. But it's not about like all the work you have to do between here and there. It's more about like all the softening you have to do, like all of the relaxing into yourself, all of the, wiping off the paint on the light bulb that needs to happen, because it's always illuminated. It's just always there. It's never not been there. It's just that we have accumulated values and beliefs, based on the coping skills we've had to develop over time. And those things came to construct our perceptions of ourselves. So a lot of it is like a deconstruction, it's kind of like a great deconstruction. And if you could imagine, I think of these things visually, but if you can imagine a deconstruction is an unfolding. It's like a tearing down so that you can reveal something underneath, right? And the thing that's underneath is usually the thing that, is what's going to allow you to sit into that, relax into what I call your fullest circumference or your sense of self-sovereignty, but just allowing for yourself. Because when you say things like, how long is it going to take me to get from A to B? That means that you're not quite allowing yourself. So I hope that helps. Someone's ringing my doorbell. I'm not expecting anybody, so they can ring someone else's bell. Glad to hear that you're doing well. This is a great way of looking at life. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad you like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today. We've been about 30 minutes now. So I'm going to sign off. I will be back here tomorrow, same time, same place. If you have more questions or things that occur to you, I'd encourage you to put them into the feed of this video, because tomorrow before I hop on, I will be looking at the questions and comments below this video and commenting on more stuff tomorrow. Tomorrow, we were going to be talking about, what did I want to talk about? It's a really insistent person. Oh, we're going to talk about love bombing tomorrow. Yes. So if you want to learn about love bombing and 6 signs of a love bomber, come join us tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.